All right, good day everyone. This is Jason Strait with the Cloud Pass Virtual Group. Our presentation today is Azure Data Studio, the new frontier, and our presenter is Warwick. This is the July 18th webinar, and for a lot of us, it is not quite July 18th, but for where Warwick is, it is already the 18th. So that's why it's a little bit oddly scheduled for today. Before we get going though today, I am going to go through a few announcements. So we do have a number of upcoming sessions over the next few weeks. These sessions kind of focus around lots of different areas within the cloud data platform. So a few Cosmo DB, some data warehousing, some continuous integration and continuous delivery sessions. So I encourage you to take a look out and see what's out there. We've got 2 sessions a week coming up all the way through September 12th. And then a number of sessions that I'm still working on getting put up that I need to just make final arrangements with some of the speakers. Even though we do have some more sessions coming in, I am always looking for new presenters and, well, not even just new presenters, just new topics and new people to present. So if you are interested, please reach out at cloud@pass.org. Or if you'd like to, you can go out to the cloud.pass.org website, and out there is a call for speakers link that you can just click into and submit your presentation, and we'll get you scheduled. Coming this fall, if you are not aware, is the Pass Summit. It's Pass Summit 2019. I think it's the 21st year of the Pass Summit occurring, and it's a pretty large event. It's Microsoft. Well, it's the SQL Server community or data platform community's largest event of the year. New this year is Learning Pathways, which are curated 75-minute general sessions that can introduce you into a new topic and bring you all the way through some advanced skills and techniques with that topic. If you are interested in checking that out, you can go out to the Learning Pathways page for Pass Summit 2019. And that's out at the pass.org website. If you have not yet registered for the Pass Summit, you can get a discount through our virtual group. The discount there on the screen is VGDISFKDQ. That gets you up to, well, that gets you a $150 US discount on your registration. If you are looking for more information on data platforms and you want to learn more about what you can do with through Pass, there are a number of virtual groups out there similar to this one. Some of them are focused on specific languages like Global Hebrew. Others are focused on job skills like database administration or DBA fundamentals. So I encourage you to go out and take a look at those if you're looking for more opportunities to learn. Throughout this session, you may have some questions. If you do, there is a questions panel that is part of the GoToMeeting frame, and if you just go into there, you can type in your questions, and at the end of the session, we'll go through all the questions with Warwick and give him an opportunity to answer those for you. And with that, those are all of the announcements that we have for this week, for this session. And so our session today, again, is Azure Data Studio, the new frontier, and our presenter is Warwick. So Warwick, I'm going to make you presenter, and then you can take over. All right, there you go.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, good evening, wherever you happen to be. It's midday for me down here in Australia. And as Jason mentioned, we're here to talk about Azure Data Studio, the new frontier. So a little bit about me. My name's Warwick Rudd. I'm the Principal Consultant with SQL Masters Consulting. The most important parts on this slide that's sitting in front of you are my contact details. You can feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn, via Twitter, or my company email to ask me any questions about this session or any particular questions that you've got regarding SQL Server in general. So the abstract for today's session, I'm not going to read through this, and hopefully you've had an opportunity to read this, and this is why you've registered and come along to today's session, and you're going to either learn something new or I'll take you on that journey on what is Azure Data Studio and why I believe that you should start to look at Azure Data Studio if you're not already. Now, as an agenda, what are we going to cover? This works really well in a live situation for the audience poll, but we'll work our way through that. But what we'll look at, I'll ask you some questions. I'll then take you on a tool history. We'll then work through the overview of the particular tool, and then as you can see, demo. Right? So basically what I'm going to be doing, I'll only be talking for about 10 minutes. Drop the mic, walk out the door, session done. You'll know everything that you need to know about Azure Data Studio. The rest of the time, we're actually going to go through the tool itself. Okay, so it is extremely heavy from being in the tool for the whole, basically the whole session that we've got today. So normally what I ask, and this is a little bit difficult because it is a virtual session, but I normally ask about who's running on a Windows platform. Majority of the time, most of the room put their hands up saying that they're either working on a laptop workstation that's running Windows, or their entire SQL Server fleet that they manage and maintain is running on a Windows platform. I then ask about who's considered using or has started to use a Linux-based platform. Sometimes you might get a handful of people, and if you are one of those people that is using Linux, maybe we can you can let us know in the questions just so that we're aware from this poll. Then there's those people who are lucky enough to work in an environment that allows you to bring your own device, and you might happen to choose to be on a Mac OS platform. The next question is, apart from me saying it a couple of times and Jason also saying it, who's actually heard of Azure Data Studio? Some people will put their hands up, and then I'll go, who's actually used the Azure Data Studio? And sometimes a lot of those hands will actually drop down. And the reason why I'm asking about these questions is because I need to try and get an understanding of to where you, the audience, fit with your understanding and use of Azure Data Studio. So with that, what is it all about? So let's have a look at the history. Now you may notice here that I've got the history and it's called SQL Ops Studio. And that's because back in November 15 in 2017 was the initial release of this tool, and it was in preview, but it was actually called SQL Ops Studio. Now you can see here going from November through to August 2018, it had a very fast release cadence. Nearly once a month, the product team from Microsoft put out an update to the tool. Then in just come down in September, SQL Ops Studio had a name change because it became generally available, and so we went from SQL Ops Studio to Azure Data Studio. And normally at this point in time, the penny will drop with people because they may have heard of SQL Ops Studio and they didn't know what this Azure Data Studio is all about. But as you can see here from a history point of view, that release cadence has continued to go on a monthly basis. On a couple of occasions, there's been 2 releases in a month. Now you will see that this product was actually a new release put out only a week ago. I haven't actually downloaded and updated to the latest release for today's session. I have in the past got caught out with this, that on the day before I did an update, because inside of the tool you can say check for updates, and it downloaded the latest updates a day before I was to deliver this session, and I then had to go and make changes to the session. But you can see here that it's continuing on that very fast release cadence, increasing or adding new features or fixing bugs or issues that have come about in the product. Now the beauty of this, you can actually have your say on the direction of the product. What the product team have done is, if you go to GitHub, and I'll bring up the GitHub website to show you, you can come to the github.com/Microsoft/Azure Data Studio, and you can keep track of and sign in and put requests on what issues you're having, what feature sets you'd like to have included, and you'll talk directly to somebody from the product team to either resolve the issue that you're having, or fix the problem, or include that into the list of options that they may like to work on. Now, when should you, well, I shouldn't say that. With the first question in the poll, the majority of people are working on a Windows platform. How do you manage and maintain your SQL Server environments? Well, you're using Management Studio, and the reason behind that was back when Management Studio was first released, which was with SQL Server 2005, the only platform that SQL Server was available on was on Windows. But what does Management Studio give us? It gives us the ability to manage and maintain our SQL Server environments in an on-premise or cloud environment, whether that be physical or virtual. It allows us to manage and maintain Azure SQL database, as well as the Azure SQL Data Warehouse. But with the release of SQL Server 2017, we got SQL Server on Linux. And so with that, that brought about, well, how do we go about managing and maintaining that environment? Well, if you were running on a Mac OS operating system or on a Linux operating system, you couldn't run Azure Management Studio. You had to either have a VM, or which was running Windows, or you would have to have a simulator or emulator that simulated a Windows environment so that you could install and run Management Studio. Therefore, because we now have a multi-platform environment, we needed a tool to be able to work across those platforms, aka we got SQL Ops Studio, or now Azure Data Studio. And as you can see here, it runs on Windows, Mac OS, or Linux, and it allows us to manage and maintain either our SQL Server environments, our Azure Data Warehouse, or our Azure SQL Database, all from this one tool. So with that, now that we've got two separate tools and they can run on or allow us to manage and maintain our environments, when should we use Management Studio? So the types of things that in your role that you would start to have a look at on when you should be using this tool. Okay, so as a DBA, if you're performing a lot of tasks around managing and maintaining security or user management, then you want to, or if you're from a performance tuning side of things, that you're using Query Store or looking at the live query statistics inside of Management Studio. If you happen to be using Data Tuning Advisor to assist you in what's happening in your environment and getting those recommendations around what changes should I implement, or if you're working closely with your developers and you need to import and export DAC packs in your environment, or if you're just in general looking after high availability tasks such as availability groups, database mirroring, log shipping, replication. All of those types of things really lend themselves for you to undertake those tasks inside of Management Studio. But when should we look at using Azure Data Studio? Well, if we're working a lot of the time inside of scripts, then Azure Data Studio is really your friend. Having said that, everything that I've just mentioned on the previous slide, we can do all of those inside of Azure Data Studio. There just isn't a lovely GUI for us to be able to do those. We can achieve all of that either using T-SQL, PowerShell, to manage and maintain our environments for everything that we saw. So this is where the beauty of it with Azure Data Studio is sitting inside of that single application. Without having to jump out and do other things, we can use just this one application to make our life easier. Who has in the past needed or been requested from management, hey, I need this, this report created very, very quickly? And that might mean that in that report you want to have some form of charts or visualizations to make things easier, because we all know that a picture paints 1,000 words, and management likes to have or see the those charts as opposed to being given tabular data to then read through. So if we need that, in the upcoming demos, I'll show you how you're able to quickly and easily be able to create some charts to make your life easier. As I mentioned, the DBA tasks, we can use T-SQL or PowerShell. If you're not already using PowerShell, then you really should start to have a look at PowerShell. And one of the tips that I will show you here to make your life easier with using PowerShell, and we don't have to step outside of Azure Data Studio. Because if you're running solely inside of Management Studio, you can't run PowerShell scripts to go and do things. You need to step out and either use VS Code or use the PowerShell IDE. So you've got to have multiple things open. And this is where I like this, because I like to, what I normally ask is, who likes to be a lazy DBA? And that lazy DBA means that I'm able to do more with less. And this is where I believe that Azure Data Studio really comes to the forefront in me being able to be more productive with that. The other big thing that you really want to be using Azure Data Studio as opposed to Management Studio is around utilizing some of the new features which are coming out in SQL Server 2019. So you may have heard of big data clusters. Well, to manage and maintain those, we can only do those from Azure Data Studio, and they're not available from SQL Management Studio. Notebooks, there's been lots of enhancements, and in this month's release there's been further enhancements around SQL notebooks, and you're only able to use those here in Azure Data Studio. Or if you happen to be using the Create Polybase or the Polybase Create External Table functionality, once again, only here. So if these are the types of things that you're starting to look at, then this is a really good starting point for you to move across from Management Studio across to Azure Data Studio. And there we go. So now we're onto the demo. And I think I've gone a little over my 10 minutes of session. But everything that I've taken you through so far is that history and what is the tool. And so now let's have a look at what is this tool called Azure Data Studio. Now you may have noticed that I haven't been using PowerPoint, and only recently I've swapped over, but we're actually in Azure Data Studio right now, and I'm actually using a SQL notebook to deliver this presentation. So the first thing that we want to have a look at, so with our the layout, on the left hand side over here on the dark, we've got our activity bar. Like normal, we've got our menu bar at the top. For our activity bar, we see a number of activities down that left hand side. When we click on an activity, it pops out and we have our sidebar, which gives us different things that we can do for that particular activity that we've chosen. In the middle, where we've got the documentation or the presentation, this is actually our terminal window. So it is very similar to what we have in Management Studio. However, we've got more at our fingertips. Now, one of the things that is really, really good on Azure Data Studio compared to Management Studio are the user settings. Azure Data Studio is very, very lightweight, so we can configure this how we like it. We don't have to use it the same way that everybody else is using it, so it's fully customizable. To do that, we've got a couple of ways that we can get to it. We can come down to the cog down here and then choose Settings. Now, the June release actually caught me out, and this is where it changed. Prior to the June release, when we went to the settings, this was purely JSON. Okay, and then the first time round I came in here and it's been put into a more user-friendly or a better user experience way for us. But we do have quite a number of settings that we can use, and you're able to search on those based on what you're wanting to set. Now, who with using Management Studio likes using the dark theme? I like it because it's easier on my aging eyes, and from a demonstration point of view, I find that it's easier for you, the attendees, to use. The downside to it was inside Management Studio, it was very difficult to set. You could either try and work it out yourself, or you could reach out to or do a Google search for Aaron Bertrand dark theme, and Aaron had done all of the work for you, and you could just download and import it. But it only changed for your query window. The beauty of with Azure Data Studio, out of the box, we can come in and we've got color themes, and they've given us a number of color themes that are available to us. So it makes it nice and easy. Now, you can pick and choose what color theme is best for you. For this one, I'm just going to choose the standard dark theme, and it applies it across the board uniformly. So it makes my life so much easier, and this now is a whole lot easier on you as an attendee to read. I've been in sessions where I've been delivering this, and I actually had to start in the dark theme because the OHP was just, we couldn't read the standard light theme, but I had to do the reverse to show how easy it was to change the settings. Now, one of the other things, so you'll see here we're currently connected on the Connections tab. With the connections, we can create server groups, and a server group is the equivalent to, or pretty close to, a registered server inside of Management Studio. We've got new connections, we've got new server groups, and then we can show our active connections on what we're wanting to do. I've got a couple of server groups already pre-created, so under demo, and I've got a default instance and a past speaking events session as well. Now, with registered servers, I don't know in the audience who normally would use add colors to their registered server groups, such that if you had a production environment, I would normally put it as red, so that when I created or opened up a new query window, it would show me very easily that this is a production instance. I need to be careful on what statements I'm running against that production instance. Now, when we do create a new server group, we do have a number of preset colors that we can choose from. We give it a name, and we're then able to click OK. Now, bearing in mind, if you are going to change your background color, just be mindful of what type of color you want to use for your server groups, because they may or may not stand out based on the color theme that you're using. Now, where I did mention that in Management Studio, if you created a new query window and it was in a registered group that you were using a color with, it would easily show that to you. If we were to go a new query in here, now we're doing that against the database which is sitting in my demo environment, and it has a color of green. But we can see here that my tab color, nothing's showing on this terminal window to show that this is associated with that demo environment. What we need to do is we have to come back to our settings, and if we type in color tab, we've got our setting. Now we can see that it's off by default, and we've got a number of settings that we can choose from. So if we choose border and we save that, if we come back to our terminal window, on this you may see it up the top here, it just puts this slight green line. So if you are going to use the color themes and want them to jump out at you, I would not recommend using the border. What you would want to do is you want to use the fill. So when we come back to our fill, you can see that it actually highlights the entire tab. But that shows you how easy it is for you to customize the type of things that you want in your environment. Now, when we come back to our session, one of the things that you may notice that is different is that when we're managing and maintaining both at an instance level and a database level, in Azure Data Studio, we have two dashboards. So to see what that looks like, we can go right-click on the instance and we can say Manage. And it brings us up this dashboard of what's happening in our environment. So we can quickly see out of the box, we've got some information about when did we last do some backups and some minimal information on database sizings. And this is where it's very customizable. And one of the things that we'll have a look at, so this database size that we can see, the graphs, that's what's known as a widget. And we'll have a look at how we can create that and add it to the dashboard later in the demo. But you'll see we've got our Home tab and we've got a couple of other tabs up here. So we've got SQL Agent and SP Who is active. Now both of these, I've got them pre-installed because they don't come loaded out of the box. These are extensions. And we'll have a look at what extensions are a bit later on in the session. Now, with our connecting to SQL Server, the beauty of it is, like we've already seen, we're easily able to add an instance. Once we've added an instance, if we've created server groups and we've put them in the wrong one, it's easy enough. We can just grab that, drag it down, and I've now moved that into the different server group. Nice and simple, a whole lot simpler than what we can do inside of Management Studio. But if we are going to connect, it is very simple. What we've got some recent connections that we're able to choose from, or we can give it a new one. For example, if we're connecting to a new named instance, and away we go. Now we don't have to choose the server group that we belong to, or we can even set at that point in time what color we want added to that. Now that we've had a look at what the tool is and how we can go about managing and maintaining that, let's start and have a look at some of the benefits that it has for us inside of Azure Data Studio itself. Now, one of the things that I do like, and this is where it comes back to being a lazy DBA, is out of the box, the product team have given us some snippets that we're able to use. Now to see that, all we need to do is we start and type SQL, and you can see here that a pop-up window has come up, and out of the box we've got a number of snippets that we're able to use. Now these are things that they obviously think that we might be using on a regular basis that can make your life easier. So we might want to, I'm not sure why you would create a cursor, but if you needed to, you could. Or we could go, let's create a stored procedure. And what it does is it automatically gives us, here's the structure on how we can create our stored procedure, and all we have to do is easily change the name of that stored procedure and add the content that we want inside of that stored procedure. The beauty of this is we can also create our own user snippets. Now, here's one that I've pre-created, so I'll just copy that, and we'll see what that looks like. To create a user snippet, there's two ways of going about it. We can come down to the cog and choose the command palette, or we can go straight to the command palette using the shortcut keys of Shift-Control-P. So if we go to the command palette, then what we're able to do is configure a user snippets. Now, this is the beauty, and this is one of the things that I didn't like about when it was called SQL Ops Studio, because it was not just for SQL Server. As you can see here in the snippets that we can create, it's not just all about SQL Server. We've got R, Python, PowerShell, we've got Jupyter notebooks, we've got normal notebooks. We can work in JSON, we've got Git and Docker, okay? So for us, we're going to choose a SQL snippet, and what it does is it opens up a SQL.json file. we want to take our snippet that we've got, let's make that a little bit more readable. And what we're doing here, nice and simple, we're giving it a name, and it's our SQL Select Top 5. That's what's going to happen when we, once we've created it and we type SQL, that's the title or what will come up as. What are we doing? Select Top 5 star from, and we're looking for from the table name. Now, this is a demo only. You wouldn't want to be using Select Top 5 star, okay? But this just shows you how we can go about doing that. So with saving that file, and if we come back to our query window, or actually we can come back to here, and if I type SQL, we can go, here's our SQL Select Top 5. Clicking on that, and there we go, we've got our Select Top 5 from our table name. We can change that easily enough, event speakers, and we can execute. Yes, I need to connect. Got our connection. And we can run that statement, and it gives us, by default, we've got a number of results that's come back to us. One of the other beauties that I do like around Azure Data Studio is how many people work with scripting on a regular basis, i.e. work having to go and modify stored procedures, views, functions, etc. And you're asked, how do or you need to go and make a modification to a particular stored procedure. And inside of that stored procedure, you need to, you're adding a new table to that. So you need to do some joins in your statement. What's the easiest way or fastest way for you to be able to find out what the table definition is that you're using, so that you can go, oh, what's the data type, making sure that you're joining appropriately, what are the column names that we need to join on, etc. Okay. Well, one of the things that I like here is they've given us the ability to very quickly have a look at what those code snippets are. And there's two ways that we can have a look at. So we can see here in this code pane, I've got table definitions, view definitions, functions, and stored procedures. If I was to right-click on the table, we can see here that we've got go-to definition and peak definition. So if I was to click on go-to definition, it goes and creates a new tab for us, and there's our table definition that we're able to quickly and easily see what are we using, what columns do we want to join on, what are those data types to make sure that we're joining appropriately. If we come back to the presentation, the other one, now let's just do it on the view, but if we go peak definition, what peak definition does, and here we go, it just scrolled on us, but what peak definition does is it creates the definition but inside of the window that we're actually using, so therefore we can quickly and easily see what we're wanting to use, make those changes with it here without having to chop and change between tabs, making our job easier. Once we're done, we just close it down. Downside to it, and hopefully they haven't changed it, but on a function, I don't believe it's still not working, that we can actually see what's working on a function, but we can use those go-to definition and peak definition for tables, views, stored procedures. Now, from a query execution point of view, one of the things that is quite good, but it's not included into the workbooks just yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this statement. We'll come out to our query window. I'll just paste those there. When I go to execute that, we get our result set. Over on the right-hand side here, you'll see a number of icons available to us. And if we have a look, so we can save our results, it's out to CSV. We can go to Excel. We can put them out as JSON, put them out as XML, or we can put them out to chart. And this is where I was mentioning at the start of the session, if we get the request from management to create a report, and we need to know what this looks like. So what we can do, we've got that result set, and we can hit chart, and by default it will create this horizontal bar chart. For this particular one, it's not that fantastic or the right one that we want to use, but we've got a number of charts available to us. So if we were to change this, let's choose a donut. Change the, there we go. I don't want, whoops, and I don't want the legend. But I can quickly and easily, there's my chart, okay? And as I scroll around, I can see results of various people on what those particular results are. From here, we can either create an insight, which is something that we mentioned at the start that we're able to add to our dashboard, or we can copy the image or save the image. Now, with that, you can copy the image, you've got your report, and you can just dump that image straight into your report. Therefore, you're a lazy DBA, you're able to create that report a whole lot quicker and give it to management, and they can see visually what you're giving to them. Now, ideally, and it's not available to us just yet, but ideally what I'd like to see, and it's more getting towards what Power BI sort of does, but let's just say I wanted to deep dive into, well, what does this particular block here mean? And so if we were to then have a second statement and dive in, and once again, if we change that to a, let's go a horizontal bar chart. So therefore we can actually see what does that mean. So ideally that'd be nice to be able to link those two together so that we could drill down so that you had those multiple insights on your dashboard, but unfortunately there is no way at the moment to drill through like that. So that brings us to, now we just mentioned about insights. Now the thing with insights, what we're able to do to create them and add them onto our dashboard, we already need to have the file or a file which has our statement that we want to run. So to go and create that, if we go and open up our file, active sessions, and so we can see here from our active sessions, it's a very simple statement that we're going to run, but it'll come back and tell us what are our active sessions which are currently running. And so what we're wanting to do when we run that, yes, we want to connect. So we've got our active session. We then go and create our chart. We can choose whatever the chart that happens to look like that we want to add on our dashboard. That's where we're able to then say create the insight, and this creates the JSON for us. So let's just format that so that we're able to read it. So it gives it a name, gives us the size, what are we looking at? So what's our widget type? So we're doing a bar chart, it's horizontal, so we can change this if we know what we want, or ideally we've pre-configured that from when we ran the statement. It's also then giving us the location where that file lives. So if we change the name of this to active session, and then what we want to do is we want to copy this, and we're going back to our settings. So we come back to our settings, and if we go to easiest way is if we go to the command palette, and then what we're going to do is we want to open the settings in JSON. And this is what we can see. These are all of my current settings that I have in place. And so we can see, if I scroll down, we can see that I changed the dark theme, and I added the fill as part of this session. So what we want to have a look at is this section here for the database widget session. Now we come to the very end. We just want to add the code that we put in. And if we save that, And then if we come back to our database and we look at our database dashboard, we can now see we've got our active session created, and we've just created our first insight. And the beauty of this, it's all dependent on what you're wanting to show on your dashboard, and you're only limited to what statements you can write to add that to your environment. Now, is that going to be a useful thing with managing and maintaining your environment? I think so. You're not being dictated to that this is the type of information that you need to have. Now, I mentioned about PowerShell. The beauty of it is we've got the ability to run PowerShell inside of Azure Data Studio. Now, if you're not already using PowerShell to manage and maintain your environments, make sure you go out to DBA Tools. It's a community-driven site that has so many things that you can use to assist you in managing and maintaining your site using PowerShell. Now, one of the things that has been, I think it was in the June release, so we actually got over here on the site activity bar, is we've got the PowerShell Command Explorer. And so if we click on that PowerShell Command Explorer, and I'll just make this a little bit wider, and it's just doing a refresh, but here we go. We've got all of these PowerShell commandlets at our fingertips to assist us in our learning, okay? So make sure you use that and go to the DBA Tools website to assist you as well. But what we are able to do, I'll just close a couple of these windows, is, and I'll just open that up prior. There we go. So by opening up that PowerShell script, we can see up in the tab that it automatically identifies that this is a PowerShell script, so I'm able to run that without having to jump outside to another tool, as I mentioned earlier. To run that, if we highlight everything, and we go back to the command palette, and we're going to say run the selected text in the active terminal, off it's gone, and we've completed successfully. So what's it gone and done? Well, I just went to the location where we created our snippets file earlier, and to prove that that worked, if I just come back to our snippets, if I type in SQL, our select top 5 is now gone. But all I was doing was showing you that we've got the ability to run PowerShell inside of Azure Data Studio without having to jump out, and we've been able to run T-SQL plus PowerShell to manage and maintain our environments. The other big thing that I really like about this compared to Management Studio, source control. For those of you who aren't already using source control and having your databases added to source control, this is a really good way for you to start down that track. So if we come to this little tab here, we can see that I'm already connected to my source control. The beauty of it is Azure Data Studio is free. You can get a Git repository for free. Once you've created that Git repository, all you need to do is we go File and we go Open Folder, and you navigate to your Git repository. Once you've done that, source control is enabled. And you'll see here that I've got some files which are they've got some changes, and they're waiting for me to undertake a task with those particular files into my repository. If we have a look at what's available to us, we can see here we've got everything available to us that we need to be able to do to manage and maintain our code into our repository. So you can either use these commands here, or you can actually write the statements yourself and execute that all from inside of Azure Data Studio. To do that inside of Management Studio, we would need to go and buy a product. So, for example, Redgate SQL Source Control. It's a fantastic tool, okay? But that's the only way that you're able to go about doing that. So this is a great starting point for you to dip your toes into getting your databases into source control. Now, I did mention extensions. Now, one of the extensions that I did mention was the SQL agent. So as an administrator, we want to be able to know what's happening in our environment, and we want to see when jobs fail, etc. Now, extensions, we can go to the extensions tab, and there's a store that you can go and get these from. Out of the box, they're not installed. So on the top here, you can see these are extensions that I've already enabled. And so the PowerShell extension, that was one that you've got to install if you happen to want to use PowerShell, and it will add all of those list of commandlets that I showed you just before. But you're able to go and have a browse and see what extensions you want to go and use, and they're changing all of the time. So there's a number of new ones that are now in here that weren't there the last time I came in. So this is where you're able to really customize for what you're needing. Now, if we just go back to our management so that we can see what they look like. So if we go to our Manage dashboard, so with SQL Agent, because this is my demo environment, it gives us that quick glance as to what is happening with all of our agent jobs. Now, some of you may already know a fellow by the name of Adam Mechanic, who created SP Who is Active, okay, as a stored procedure that you can put in your environment, and it can assist you in troubleshooting. Well, same thing here. Adam has gone and created that, but as an extension that you can install into your environment. Now, one of the things that to install those, it is very simple. You just select the particular one that you're wanting to use. So let's just say Redgate SQL Search. So if I was to click on that, as long as you've got an internet connection, it will come out to the store and you're able to then go and install. The beauty of this, for those of you who are in environments that you're where you're going to have Azure Data Studio installed, if you don't have internet connectivity, you can go to the store, go to these sites, download the installation for this, so the v6 file. You can then hand this to your security team. They can scan it, make sure that it's all clean, and put it onto the environment, and then you're able to install. Makes your job nice and simple. Okay, we then install. I won't do this now because I don't want to interrupt our internet connectivity, but that would then go and install that extension into our environment. How are we going for time? We've got 10 minutes. Okay. Now, I did mention SQL notebooks. Now, I've done this entire presentation just using a SQL notebook, and I haven't had to step outside and jump between a PowerPoint presentation and our SQL notebooks. What do SQL notebooks allow us to do? Well, as you've seen, we've got text, we've got images, and we've got code. They are very simple to create, and depending on what you're wanting to use, they can be a fantastic tool, for example, if you're wanting to troubleshoot an issue. For example, let me just make this a little bit down. So here's another one that I've prepared earlier. And what this allows us to do is if we're having an issue in our environment and we're just wanting to check what is happening in that environment, we just connect to our local instance. And we can see that I've got a number of text sessions which are running, which has a number of code. I have run this previously, but we can then execute this, and the beauty of it is that it stores and captures the result set in the notebook file. So therefore I can come back and compare this to when we were having the problems to what we've got now. Or if I need to share this with one of my team members, they can see the statement that I ran, plus they can also see the results that I did get from that. If you are going to use SQL notebooks and hand this off to a colleague, or if you need to hand this off to a consultant or somebody outside of your company, be very careful with the data that you are handing out. Because if you're running this against prod, depending on the statement that you are running, you may be handing over data that is sensitive and you don't actually want handed over. Okay, so it may be falling under GDPR, for example. So you really need to be careful, but it does make your life a whole lot easier with using these to collaborate between team members. To create one is very, very simple. We just go File and we say New Notebook. Once we've got the new notebook, we're then able to, we can see up the top here, we can add code or we can add text, and away we go. Some of the changes that they have done is we can execute a single cell, or we can go and run all of the cells, or we can go and clear all of these results. So therefore, if I was wanting to track something down, I can just execute. So if I just clear the results, yep, all done, and then we go and run those cells, and it will go and work behind the scenes, and as we can see, here's the results which are starting to pop up for us. I can execute that, let it run, come back, and I've got all of the results that I want that I can then go and analyze, work out what we need to change. So normally I do have a look into the future, but what I didn't want to do is, given that we've only just had a release a week ago, I didn't want to have anything in here that's for next month as yet, but normally I do have in here, this is what is coming. So it's a bit of a teaser for what you can use. Now, here is a list of all of the resources which I have used in the putting together of this session that you're able to utilize and work through and do everything that I've taken you through here today so that you can come up to speed and start and use Azure Data Studio. So with that, I'd like to say thank you all. We've got a few more minutes left in the hour. Happy to hang around for a little bit to ask any questions. So with that, Jason, do we have any questions?
All right, yeah, we do have one here that's in the queue. So the first question that we have here is it possible to change the results format and colors?
Is it possible to change the results format and the colors?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we come back to a query window, so by default, if we just run this statement, it will automatically just go to the tabular. Unlike in Management Studio, where we get to choose that we want it in tabular, out to file, or just in text, we've only got the tabular here, other than if you're wanting it to go to the chart, and then you can choose the chart that you're wanting to go to. As for changing the colors of the bar charts that we're seeing here, right at this stage, I do not believe that we're able to change the colors of those. So if I change that from, let's change it to the donut, okay? I don't believe that I have the ability to change those at this point. I'd have to go looking to see if that's in the settings.
All right. And then the next question is it possible to add a hyperlink to Notebook in OneNote?
Is it possible to add a hyperlink to Notebook? So all of these, so from here to OneNote, did you say?
I think it's adding a hyperlink in OneNote that would go to this notebook.
Oh, that is a good question. I don't see why not, because if you, in OneNote, if you're just adding a hyperlink, you're right-clicking and saying add hyperlink, and you're navigating to where the location of the file, etc., that you're wanting to go to. Now, given that a notebook, it is just a file. So, for example, I'll just bring up our presentations. Run one, go here. So Cloud VC ADS presentation, that's my notebook file. So I don't see why you wouldn't be able to put a hyperlink to that. Whether that would open it up, I don't believe it would open it up, but you could definitely have that so that you know where it is.
All right. And that's actually, the question is what is IPYNB?
So that's just the extension. So where notebooks originally came from, so Jupyter notebooks were the first ones to come along. And when I first started with notebooks, adding a SQL notebook, it literally was a Jupyter notebook, and we had to put certain code into the block to say this is actually a SQL notebook. And what you will notice up the top here in the notebook is, so you've got the kernel, and if we drop down this kernel, we've got a number of ones that you can then choose from, right? So therefore you can run a Python, run Python 3 for your type of notebook. I'm running the SQL one, so this knows that in here it's using the SQL engine, and away we go. But that's just the extension for the particular notebook to determine that it is a notebook.
All right, excellent. All right, that is all of the questions that we have today. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, and thank you, Warwick, for presenting. This was great. I actually hadn't had a chance to take a look at this at any time prior to today, and I think I'm going to go install this at work tomorrow.
That's good. I've done my job.
All right. All right, well, thank you, and I'm going to close this out. So hope to see everyone at the next set of presentations. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jason.